Welcome in. It's the early wedge. It's US Open week. I'm Rick Gehman. This is your DFS preview. We've got a lot to get through. We're going to talk about a golf course that we haven't seen in nearly a decade that has promised carnage, absolute carnage to everybody who dare tee it up. We've got to go through this field. We've got to find some value, and helping me do just that, Sia Nejad is here. Hello, Sia.
What's going on? I'm excited. We got an expensive Scottie. We got a 5K range and a 6K range and a 7K range. That's super rich. We got all kinds of different ways to construct our lineups. And I got to say, the early wedge is coming off me and Patrick McDonald hitting Ryan Fox as a winner. A lot of outrights on the betting show, which we're very proud of. So let's see if we can roll that into this week as well.
Roll on indeed. Mike McClure is here. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Rick. Sia, great to see you guys. I'm peeking at the chat and I see Sia typing over 8.5. Is he talking about the Steelers or the projected cut number for this week's tournament? I think it could be both.
Honestly, that would be a pretty good cross sport. You'd have to wait 6 months to figure this one out, but that would be a great little line set. 8.5, or which is higher, Steelers wins or cut line at the US Open?
There are people that are willing to make that weight. I can't remember exactly, I'm forgetting which Twitter profile it was, but there was somebody, and this is all over Twitter now, somebody that we follow, maybe it certainly follows me, had a $20 bet on a Zach Ertz anytime touchdown in the Lions game, which would have been whatever, the game before Washington lost to the Eagles. And that was parlayed with Cameron Young winning the US Open. And the ticket is for 180. Oh, it might have been with Ryan Fox too. The ticket pays $184,000. It was something crazy. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. These cross sport things, you can do it.
I have no problem locking the money up. I just don't have the forethought to be I know what I'll do. And anytime touchdown,
yes,
wager,
so random.
And then not the first major championship, not the second, but I'm going to go I'm going to go to June and I'm going to find something for the I just don't have I can't think a day ahead, let alone 6 months ahead.
Agree. Yeah.
Stellar stuff. Well, we are headed to the outskirts of Pittsburgh. We are getting down at Oakmont. It is the venue that we've seen the most in US Open history. Josh has the scorecard, and it looks pretty benign on the card. Oh, it's a par 70, 7,300 yards. What could possibly go wrong? But Mike, the narrative, the noise, the conversation around this week, and honestly, since we started looking, probably since we got through Pinehurst last year, is that Oakmont is going to beat the pants off of these guys. What do you see?
That is definitely what I'm seeing, and I will definitely buy into that here. We get this conversation a couple times every season, really. But anytime you're at Oakmont, I do think that, just the way the course is laid out and the way it's just prepared and set up, I think that everyone wants it to be the most difficult test, and I personally think that's what it's going to be. So I think the winning score may be even par. I think that would be where we're headed right now, as evident by my little joke about the 8.5 being the cut number. I don't think the 8.5 is going to be too far off, though. I think it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. You're going to see a lot of frustrated golfers out there this week.
When I looked at it this morning, they had the line for the winning score. So not the cut score, the winning score at 278.5, which would be 1.5 under par. Now we'll see where that is. I think in an ideal world, the USGA would get a score very close to even par for the winner. I think that would be their ideal setup. Obviously, there's a lot of things that can happen between now and Sunday evening, but this is going to require everything you got and then some.
I think it's part of the reason why I think from a DFS standpoint, everybody's going to want to play one of 3, maybe 4 guys that are people are going to think they have to be in your lineup because, and Mike can probably answer the win equity question, not in terms of what the sports books say, but maybe what his model says. But, it's hard to not think of an expensive Scottie Scheffler because when you're talking about a course like this, Scottie Scheffler, John Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau, I mean, obviously there's more to that. There's probably 4 or 5 other names that you could go to, but it just seems like this course calls for something that not everybody has in terms of being able to do it over 4 rounds. And it does narrow the field in terms of who's actually going to win and who you might need in your DFS lineup.
So we've got the winning score line, 278.5. We've got the conversation around maybe 4 or 5 golfers being able to win this golf tournament. What is it, Mike? What is it about this place that is going to be so challenging?
I mean, the rough for sure. You've got to be great off of the tee, and if you're not, I mean, let's say great. Like you have to actually be great. Other places you can be good and get away with it. I think you actually have to be great on a number of holes here. Otherwise, you're really, you're looking at a bogey for sure, right? So, to pick up any sort of actual like momentum and rack up birdie or like consecutive birdies, for example, like you're going to have to play just fantastic golf. And I think that it really just allows the top to really separate even more so than some of these normal events that we're looking at. I think that's a good question in the chat as well.
Yeah,
I need to check the weather again and see. Maybe one of you two have already done that for right now, but yeah,
it was thunderstorms today, or at least this afternoon, which might lay a little bit of more water on the ground. They've had a little bit of a wet lead in, but moving forward, it should be pretty clean. The question was in regards, Sia, to would rain make it more difficult? I think there's a couple of ways that you could go here. Could rain dry out these greens enough? They are hoping to run them somewhere between 14 and 15 on the stimp, which is absolutely nuts. A softer fairway could be better for guys keeping it in the fairway. It would effectively make them wider. What would you tweak, if anything, when it comes to weather, particularly in the form of precipitation?
Well, I do think it's going to rain here and there. I seem to recall Thursday and Friday. I do think that makes the course way more receptive, especially as it relates to the green. So I think we could see better scores if the course softens up. And I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but Oakmont's got a sub-air system on the greens, right? So, I mean, maybe they're able to dry those things out. But I do think rain is going to help, like, make the scores better.
Yeah, it is. The forecast that I mean, it's basically Pittsburgh in the summer. It could be a lot of just kind of thunderstorms here and there, but they're definitely getting something right now. They're in a thunderstorm watch right now, and we'll kind of see how much rain that ends up dumping on the course. So as you start to model this out, Mike, we've got the narrow fairways with thick rough. We've got large undulating greens. We've got a variety of bunkers protecting basically everything. Let's flip it on the positive side. Like, what are we looking for? What are the skill sets that we could start modeling based off, or as we go through this conversation tier by tier, what types of players are we looking for?
Strokes gained elite, and just strokes gained talent, strokes gained hard. I want the best golfers. I want to find ways to get access to whoever it is, your horse at the top. I think it's a 3-horse race right now, but the 3rd horse is Jon Rahm, not Rory McIlroy this week for me. And I think it's pretty clearly Bryson and Scottie. But as far as what I'm looking for, I mean, you have to be great off the tee. It's never going to hurt to have some distance. With the distance comes the club head speed. That's going to mostly kind of be it for me. Like, I definitely think there's some putting stuff that you can look at. I definitely think that you can look at some of the longer approaches. I mean, we've got a 300-yard par 3 here to play with. So for me, it's just strokes gained hard, like guys that are basically able to tackle the toughest tests. It's going to be heavily correlated with just total strokes gained. But if I'm leaning one way or the other, it's definitely going to be off the tee play and distance.
The problem, and I agree with Mike here, but the only problem is I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find 6 of those elite players under the $50,000 salary cap. So I am going to have to make some concessions somewhere. What would I be looking for in terms of golfers that are not going to be your Scottie Schefflers, your Rory McIlroys, your Bryson DeChambeaus?
Well, we see at courses like this, some of the, we want distance and we want club head speed and all those things. And I'm looking at those too, but there are going to be some of the shorter hitters that might not be, if we're talking DFS, if we're being DFS conscious here, some of the shorter hitters that are accurate that just might not be as expensive. that might be like, for example, I'm looking for accuracy and distance, and I'm looking at club head speed. I'm looking at putting. Obviously, I'm looking at approach play, but there's certainly some guys that might not win this tournament, but certainly could top 20, top 10 this tournament that fit a slightly different description than your Ludwigs and your Brysons. Like Colin Morikawa comes to mind a little bit, but there's plenty of like poor man Morikawas like Russell Henley, or some might say Sepp Straka, although some might say Morikawa is the poor man Sepp Straka, like I said a couple of months ago. But the point is, there are some of those shorter, accurate hitters that have good iron play that absolutely can succeed here. So they might not win the tournament. They might not be in the class that those top three are in, but I think their ability to spike for your DFS lineup is absolutely there.
Last time we saw Oakmont, it was Dustin Johnson in 2016 at 4 under, in 2007, and Angel Cabrera 5 over, maybe somewhere in the middle this time around. We are going to start naming names, a $5,000 range in play this week, and maybe the most expensive fantasy golfer that we have ever seen. We're going to continue that conversation after a quick word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
And we're back. Here we go, boys. This is my website here, rickrungood.com, and there are 5 golfers over $10,000, led by a $14,000. You heard me, $14,400 Scottie Scheffler. Rory McIlroy, $2,000 cheaper. He's $12,400. Bryson DeChambeau is 11 even. Xander, that's Schauffele, $10,400, and then Jon Rahm at $10,200. So, Mike, let's talk about the man at the top of the board. He's the number 1 player in the world. He is, as far as I'm aware, I was trying to go back through my database here. I've got 6 or 7 years worth of fantasy data. I think the only guy who's ever been more expensive than Scottie Scheffler was Justin Thomas. With the first year they did the Tour Championship with the staggered start, he was like 15.5 or something outrageous. Outside of a staggered start event, I believe this is the most expensive fantasy golfer that we have ever seen. What say you about Scottie Scheffler and how he fits into lineups for this week?
You can play Scottie. It's not easy. You mentioned about finding 6 golfers that you think are elite. You're definitely not finding 6 that you think are elite with Scottie in those lineups initially. But the thing that stands out to me is just his price relative to the other 2 guys that I put in that tier right now. And I think they've finally overpriced Scottie Scheffler.
Oh, okay. So it might have taken a historic price tag, but we might be at the limit 14,400. What I assume, actually, I shouldn't assume this, but Mike is referring to the difference between Scottie Scheffler and 2 other golfers that he puts into that tier. I assume Bryson DeChambeau is one, $11,000. That is a $3,400 discount. Mike, just to put a bow on it, are you comfortable with Rory McIlroy, or are you going in a different direction?
I am not comfortable with Rory at all.
Okay.
Rory, you rarely get this from me because I am notorious for saying there is a price point and ownership combination in which every player in the field is playable. I am taking that back. I'm not playing Rory this week. I am putting the red X through Rory. I think the ownership will still be there just enough with his name. I'm not comfortable with him there, but Jon Rahm is $4,200 cheaper than Scottie Scheffler. I mean, the gap between those 2 is essentially like dangerously close to a minimum price golfer in this field, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty interesting way to put it. Okay, so that I'm glad I clarified that, Sia, because I did not want to put Rory McIlroy's name into Mike's mouth without asking first. So Mike referring to the gap between golfer 2 and 3 being so great that it is finally a point where Scottie might have been priced too high.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with the 5K range and with the 6K range being so rich, you can definitely play Scottie lineups and be okay. I mean, depending on whether you like somebody in the upper 5K range, which we'll get to. Like, maybe you want to do Scottie with Matt McCarty, for example, or somebody in that 5,700, 5,800 range. All of a sudden, at that point, you've got like in the mid 7Ks left, and you can kind of work your lineup, work a 6K guy, an 8K guy, whatever you want to do. So it's doable to make these Scottie Scheffler lineups, and I'm certainly going to have some. But I also like the idea of, and I think a lot of people are going to like the idea of, okay, well, I'm going to go to Bryson and I'm going to start there. Or I mean, some people might even do a Bryson Scottie lineup, although that's really hard. I love Jon Rahm though. I agree with Mike there. I think there's a big three for this week, and we might be wrong. Roy might just show up and strokes gained mental state might suddenly be there, but I'm not really counting on it. I love how Jon Rahm's been playing. So I might even have, from a DFS standpoint, I might even have Jon Rahm ahead of Bryson. And that's mostly because I think Bryson's going to be a little bit more popular. I also think I'm going to start some lineups with Jon Rahm and then move down from there just to get different with my lineup construction and a couple of different players. But I do agree that Scottie Scheffler, Bryson, or Rahm probably belong in, at least one of them belong in everybody's lineup, if not two of them. And that you can do with Bryson and Rahm. But Rahm is probably my favorite, all things being factored in there.
Jon Rahm did not play the U.S. Open last year. He withdrew before the event started. Did not tee it up at Pinehurst. Prior to that, a T10 at LACC, a 12th at Brookline, the win at Torrey Pines. John in the chat here, Mike says, how can we get different if the majority are going to start lineups with Bryson and Rahm? I don't think that's going to be the majority, but there might be a lot who opt to say, okay, well, I've got this big price difference that I heard Mike talk about on the early wedge. I've got two golfers that I do not get a chance to play very often, and I think that they're both a great fit. I'm going to jam them both into my lineup. How many, what do you think the likelihood of that thought process is? And if so, if you think it is a lot of people, how are we differentiating off of that?
I do think it's a lot of people. We contribute to this, and I think we have to also recognize that when we talk about some of these things. We're doing the show on Monday. By the time Thursday rolls around, we do contribute to some of this quote unquote groupthink, even if we are originating a lot of it, right? And I think that by the time Thursday rolls around, I do think the market sentiment is going to be extremely low on Rory. And I think it's going to be quite high on Jon Rahm. I think there's enough people that are interested in Jon Rahm. So I think it is going to be popular to see a Bryson Rahm combo. The two most popular combos I could see having lineups, and I like both of them, is a Rahm Bryson start and a Scottie Shane Lowry start. If you're playing Scottie, I think Shane Lowry is your second guy in like 99% of those lineups at 7,800. I think he's probably the best golfer you can get in the upper sevens. That's got some real form, got some real win equity, plays well on difficult courses. So as far as getting different in those, for me, you've got to be a little different in that 6 to 7, low 7K range. So guys that are going to be popular, probably Tyrrell Hatton at 7,600. Probably Patrick Reed at 6,900. The one that I think will be fascinating is Cam Young at 65 after how he just played and has been playing of late. Those names that I'm mentioning, they're all good. They're all fine. They're all good plays individually. Don't play them all together if you're starting your lineup with Bryson and Jon Rahm. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll get to some of those guys here in just a few moments, but the 9K range is small and lurks right below. Colin Morikawa is 9,800. Ludwig Oberg is 96. Patrick Cantlay 93, and Justin Thomas is 9,000. That's it, Sia. 4 guys in the now $9,000 range as you've started to create lineups, and salaries have been out for, oh my goodness, a handful of days now. What have you learned about this $9,000 range?
Well, speaking of making lineups a little different or differently, I can't get away from making some lineups that are going to feature one of those top guys and Colin Morikawa. And I understand why people might not want, by the way, I'm not even a Colin Morikawa guy, but I do think there are paths for the Colin Morikawa game to succeed here. And obviously Colin can probably succeed in most places, but he certainly hasn't shown it. But I'm definitely going to differentiate myself by having like a Rahm Colin start, maybe even a Scottie Colin start, where I just don't think a lot of people go. I agree on the Lowry thing. And I do want to point out, I wrote an article that I think was published days ago with CBS, and my 2 outrights in the without Scottie Scheffler market, which I'll carry over to the Best Bets show tomorrow, were Shane Lowry, and that without market was 35-1. And at the time it was Jon Rahm at 11-1. Again, that was in the without Scottie Scheffler market. So I clearly like those two as well. But if I'm looking at the big 4 that you just pointed out, It's probably Colin for me. I'm not playing JT and I'm not playing Cantlay. I think Cantlay's going to get some ownership because he always does. JT probably not so much, but from a game theory standpoint, I probably still don't go there. I like Ludwig's upside, but I just think Colin's going to get squeezed a little bit, and it wouldn't shock me if he succeeds here. So I think Colin's my favorite here.
T36 and a miscut for Justin Thomas at the first two majors of the year. Patrick Cantlay, T36 and a miscut. Is that exactly the same? It is. Oh my gosh, these guys are in lockstep. Patrick Cantlay and Justin Thomas. Ludwig is having himself a little bit of a bizarre year, a couple of really strong finishes and maybe some not so good ones at $9,600. Mike, when you get to this 9K range, how are you deploying your troops?
You know, I'm not getting a lot of it, admittedly. And a lot of that is because I will be starting Bryson Rahm or Scottie Lowry. So it does squeeze this range a bit. So to answer questions that have already been asked, you want to get different, get some 9K golfers in your lineup. It's going to be very different from what I'm projecting here. First one for me in would be Patrick Cantlay. I can ignore the one miscut there. He'd kind of been lurking. I like Patrick Cantlay in the sense that I know that you're not shooting 10 under to win this tournament or more. I think that he can go pick up pars and or bogeys and not double bogeys in the right spot and in the right time. So the one, I think he's probably 6 to 8% owned here. I think it'll be right in single digits. I'm getting him a little bit more than that. And what's interesting there is he's the only player in the 9K range that when I've told about a lot, 5,000 lineups, he's the only player in the 9K range that I am getting more often than his projected ownership.
Interesting. Okay. I look at his major championship record. It's probably better than people realize. Obviously no victories yet, but that miscut at Quail was his first miscut since Southern Hills, which was the PGA Championship in 2022. So he's been a very good major championship performer. I suppose, gents, we can continue because not only is pricing softer for a major championship as it normally is, it comes out early. It creates a situation in which you do get some valuable plays. We've got some household names in the $8,000 range as well. Tommy Fleetwood, Joaquin Neiman, Viktor Hovland, Brooks Koepka, and Hideki Matsuyama. Just five, Mike, just five of them.
Yep.
As your 5,000 lineups or whatever it is deploy. What are they showing about this range?
Yeah, there are two guys that stand out. One is going to garner a lot of ownership, and that's Joaquin Neiman. I can agree with it. I think he's near the top for me. So I've got a positive value on him, and I've got a positive value on Hideki Matsuyama. I kind of what I started to say with Cantlay, and I really needed to just save it for Hideki. I love Hideki when I know we're not needing to shoot 10 under or better. When we're just talking about hovering around even par and just simply surviving, I think that's where I want to back Hideki. It's the around the green play. He's long enough off the tee. I think Hideki is, a great price at 8K. Again, it's not comfortable necessarily getting them into lineups. And one way to get different would certainly be finding an extra 200 for him over Shane Lowry, although I do love both of them and I'll be playing both of them. Hideki and Neiman are the two that I've got positive values on that could be played per the way I build my lineups.
Hideki is one of those strokes gained hard players, very good major championship performer. The miscut at the last major was his first in, I think, 19 in a row. It was the longest active streak. He has not missed a cut at the US Open since 2016. That was at Oakmont. He's been splendid ever since. And then, of course, Joaquin Neiman coming off his fourth win on Live Golf this year. That one was in Virginia. Didn't even putt well to get himself a victory there. Sia, what is the 8K range speaking to you?
First of all, I'm busy making lineups right now because this is so fun. I'm telling you, there's so many options and so many directions you can go. Even if you think it's just going to be three players that can win. Can I just give you an example? And then Rick, I promise I'm going to answer your question.
Sure.
I didn't even mean to do this, but because Mike brought up Neiman, and I really wasn't planning on playing Neiman, but twist my arm, I may end up playing him. I just never play him. So anyway, I put Neiman. Wasn't intended to be a live lineup, but Neiman, Bryson, and Rahm, I put in a lineup. So 10,200, 11,000, and 8,600. I can still fit into that lineup. Andrew Novak, who is 6,300. I mean, you don't have to choose Andrew Novak. There's so many guys in the low 6K. Right? I just chose Andrew Novak. I like the upside, obviously. Harris English, who I know a lot of people like, including me. I've been betting on him at 6,700. And Sam Burns at 7,100. I think there's plenty of win equity in that lineup. It doesn't have Scottie, but it has two of the three big guns that we talked about and plenty of guys that I honestly think any of these guys could top 10 this tournament if they're playing their A minus to straight A game. So again, it's really fun to make lineups, and there's a lot of different ways you can go. As far as the 8K range is concerned, I do kind of like Neiman. Again, I wasn't planning on playing him. Tommy's going to look really good. He's going to model well. I just don't see the upside like I do with some of these other guys, but I don't hate that play. Probably not getting to Viktor, probably not getting to Brooks, and I'm definitely not getting to Hideki. So to me, it's probably Joaquin Neiman as a maybe, and then I'm out. But this is not a range I'm going to be living in.
Coming up on 1 year since Tommy Fleetwood last missed the cut. That was the Open Championship in 2024. He's been putting up a lot of decent finishes, but again, Sia questioning that upside, and probably fair. Not a sniff around Brooks Koepka, 5-time major champion. Sia shaking his head no. Since his win, Mike, at Oak Hill, has not been good in major championships for Brooksy, and his live golf performances have suffered as well.
Yeah, for Brooks, it's one that, you know, if he goes out there and contends and wins, congratulations, right? He falls firmly in the category of I need to see it again to believe it.
Losing strokes with the putter, losing strokes around the green, ball striking has taken a dip as well for Brooks Koepka. We have a lot of household names. We've got a lot of firepower still to get to. We're going to talk the 7s, the 6s, and the 5s. But first, Josh, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. Remarkable! To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R. Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
And we're back. All right, now this is where we start to get some of these wider ranges, and they're going to get just gradually bigger as we go down here. The 7K range features 15 different golfers. Shane Lowry, who we've already mentioned a bit, and Sepp Straka are at the top. Jordan Spieth, Keegan Bradley in the middle. The bottom of the 7K range offers Sungjae Im and Wyndham Clark at a flat 7,000. See, I'm going to bounce this to you first. I know that you had just mentioned Sam Burns, who is $7,100 as a guy that you threw into a lineup there because he was obviously priced before he got into that playoff last week in Canada. Is it him as the guy in the 7K range, or is there a different direction we can go here?
Sam Burns is such a good play that, I mean, we're talking about where the community is going to be by the time we get to our live chat at 4:00, Rick, on Wednesday or Wednesday night. I mean, like, how can you resist the call of Sam Burns right now? I mean, club head speed, we're talking about putting, or at least a lot of people talking about putting. He rates out well there, accuracy and distance, just kind of combining them, total driving, whatever. He looks really good coming off the recent form, as he probably should have won last week, obviously. I love Sam Burns, but if I could go to the top, I really like Hatton, Lowry, and Straka. I mean, those are names that people are going to talk about as well. But you know what they're not going to do, Rick? They're not going to put all three of those guys in a lineup. And I just did with John Rahm. And I still, for my last two spots, have 8,350 left, which means I can go back up to the top and then go down in the 6K range and call it a day. There's so much value in this 7K range. And I do think those three guys I just mentioned have plenty of top 5 upside.
Terrell Hatton, $7,600, finished T15 at Live Golf Virginia. He's finished 14th and 60th in his 2 major championships this year. Sepp Straka, of course, twice a winner on the PGA Tour. And Shane Lowry, Mike, that's the man that you were saying, I believe 99% of your Scottie Scheffler lineups would have Shane Lowry in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shane's probably going to be my highest owned golfer, honestly, just because he fits so well with Scottie. And once you start Bryson and Rahm, it's first click in at 7,800. So I'm going to have a lot of Shane Lowry. I love Terrell Hatton as well. As Sia mentioned, I will play both of those guys together quite a bit. The other guy that pops a lot is Ben Griffin at 7,200. I don't think he's going to quite get to where Shane and Tyrrell Hatton are. I think he's still probably in a major, lacks a little bit of the name value that those two carry. And again, 7,200, while it is cheaper, it's not terribly hard to go get Hatton at 76 and Lowry at 78. So those are the three that I've got positive value on. So my three golfers in that 7 range would be Hatton, Lowry, and Griffin. And I will have all three in the same lineup with Scottie Scheffler.
I was very much, before we got to the PGA Championship, I think I was like, all right, Ben, like the way you've been playing, but show me something in a major championship. And boy, did he. The T8 where he gained across the board, and then he said, watch this, and he won the Charles Schwab. And then he said, watch this, and he almost won the Memorial. He ended up finishing second there. So I think I'm in on this. I mean, he is very long, a lot of club head speed. He has not really wilted in a moment. He's been playing great golf across the board. $7,200 feels very, very exciting to me.
Yeah, I think it's, if memory serves, the accuracy issues off the tee that could potentially present a problem here. And again, narrow fairways, a lot of people are going to have issues just being in the rough. Sometimes you just have to just put models aside or whatever, even stats, Rick, earmuffs, and be like, who's playing really well? Who's just figuring it out everywhere? And Ben Griffin's one of those guys. And I think there's plenty of guys here where we could just point to their skill set and what we think they are on tough course. I don't know about Ben Griffin on this particular course, but I'm just saying, like, when they're tested in a talented field, like, who are they? And I'll give you an example. This is probably a bad example of the Ben Griffin experience, but there's a guy that I don't think is going to get a ton of attention that's in this range, Minwoo Lee. He's had a pretty good U.S. Open track record. He's certainly got the distance off the tee, the club head speed, the ability to putt, all of those things. He's lacking in other areas too. Don't get me wrong, with maybe accuracy and approach play, but there's a lot of guys in this 7K range that are uber talented and that have won. And I think that needs to be a consideration when you've got a field like this.
27th, 5th, and 21st for Minwoo in his U.S. Open career. Obviously a winner earlier this year in Houston. It's cooled a bit since then, but that's happens all the time. Guys win for the first time, and then they go a little bit cold. Anybody else in the 7K range that I need to address before we move on? Tony Finau played well when we were at Wingsfoot. I think there are a lot of really good Wingsfoot comps for this week at Oakmont. Is there anybody else in the 7K range I need to hit on before we move along?
Well, I want to ask Mike real quick. I want to ask Mike and Rick this. Keegan, Henley, and Connors, what are your take on those guys? Because I don't think they're bad plays. I just can't. I haven't decided if I think they're really good plays either.
I'll take the Connors one because that's actually where I was going to go. I think I'm showing Connors being pretty popular. That's when I have a pretty negative value on, which I found interesting because I had been relatively high on Corey Connors most of the season. So I will be taking a seat on Corey Connors. I will not be playing him here at 7,300 and the ownership that's coming with it. I'd much rather play Ben Griffin at 72. And some of these others that we're about to talk about in the 6s. So as far as the others, I'm pretty neutral on, but I did want to point out that I had a pretty meaningfully negative value on Corey Connors.
I think I prefer Russell Henley there. I find it fascinating that his worst U.S. Open start recently has been at the place that I think on paper should have been the best for him, which is Brookline at the Country Club. And while he has figured out a way to finish inside the top 25 at Erin Hills and Shinnecock, and he finished T7 at Pinehurst and like Torrey, like I don't know what he's doing, but it is not what I would expect, but it's a lot of really good golf there from Russell Henley off of his 5th place finish at the Memorial. The 6K range, which is not the bottom of the barrel. It starts with a handful of golfers at the top: Justin Rose, Jason Day, Patrick Reed, Siwoo Kim. The middle of this range, that's Brian Harman, Benny On, Cam Young had a chance to win last week, Taylor Pendrith, amongst others. The bottom of this range, that's Steven Yeager, Richard Bland, Mark Leishman, Gary Woodland, but there are a lot of names here, Mike. First crack for you of the 50 golfers that reside in the 6K range.
I'll start with Patrick Reed. Skill set alone, elite. To me, still elite in major championships, difficult fields. So I'll play some Patrick Reed. Siwoo, you mentioned, I like him. I like Jason Day a little bit, and that just it's coming with 3 to 4% ownership probably on Jason Day. I think when you look at that range, I think people are probably more likely to click Patrick Reed's name at the same price. I think Cameron Young could get a little traction later in the week.
Let me ask you that, Mike, then, because like, who are the popular guys in the 6K range? Is it Cam Young at 6,500 after what he did last week? Ryan Fox, fresh off the win at 68. Like, who are the popular guys in the 6K range?
Let me pop down here to the 6K range. Harris English stands out as the most popular for good reason. I think we can all, if you've been a fan of the channel or a fan of the game, you can probably intuitively understand that.
Yeah, and if you're not, Harris English will par a golf course to death like he did it at Torrey Pines earlier this year en route to victory.
Aaron Rye is popping as well because he's all the way down to 6,400. He can do some very interesting things off the tee. So I think he's going to be popular. It looks like Harris English, Aaron Rye are going to be pretty clearly the top 2 in ownership there. And then after that, I think it could be Daniel Berger again and McIntyre.
Robert McIntyre. Okay, he's actually the favorite for top lefty this week. Just throwing that out there. I think there's 8 or 9 of them in the field. Akshay Patia has the second shortest odds. He's also in this range. Sia, hearing what Mike has to say about who he thinks the most popular golfers are going to be, and your assessment of this 6K range, what do you come up with here on this Monday afternoon?
I'll say this. I certainly agree with Mike's assessment of the popularity of those two. I think Cameron Young is definitely going to pick up some ownership. Bud Cauley at 6,100 probably deserves some ownership because we know what he can do with the ball striking. So I think those 4 guys are going to get some popularity. I like them all. I really like Ryan Fox. I mean, why wouldn't I? There's a reason I've been playing him over the last few weeks, and it's partly because he had historically been known as a guy that can mash it off the tee, but the accuracy was just all over the place. Well, he's kind of reined that in, and the approach play has come along for the ride with him. So I don't really see a reason. I can't figure out a reason not to play Ryan Fox outside of the fact that, that just the narrative that he won last week. And that could play in, but really like Ryan Fox.
I'm looking at this. Ryan Fox wins the week before the PGA Championship. Ryan Fox wins the week before the Canadian Open. Do we just chalk him up for winning the week before the Open? That would be the Scottish Open. Ryan Fox, your 2025 Scottish Open winner. No big deal. Easy game. Yeah, 4 really good starts in a row for Foxy, the 2 wins, and then a 28th and a 20th at the PGA and the Memorial, which are very difficult spots. Mike, this range, I mean, we are far from the elites in this range, right? We've got guys that have either needed to qualify themselves in. We'll get more of those in just a little bit. I also see that we're getting into a handful of live golfers, which I think that outside of, I think everyone is on the same page about Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, Joaquin Neiman, and Patrick Reed. I think that everybody is like, okay, pretty bullish there. Mark Leishman's in this field. Richard Bland has won basically every single senior major in the last couple of years. He is in this field. There are Carlos Ortiz is in this range. I'm not sure there is a consensus on the non-Big Four live golfers.
No, I definitely don't think there is. As far as how much I personally am going to live down in this range, I don't know at this point, but yeah, I think that there's not, the ownership, again, this is very early I'm looking at, but live or non-live, there's not a massive stance. I mentioned Harris English being really popular. That's still only showing about 9% owned. It's not some 15-20% owned player. So I think that there's a huge opportunity here to get very different in the 6s without having to force a 5K guy in to make your lineup different.
Yes. And I agree with that. And we'll get down to the 5K in just a second, Sia, but the 5K range is really guys that are really struggling or guys that open qualify. We're talking about there's like a dentist in this field. There's like a high school senior in this field, and they got themselves into this event, and that is how you do it. And it is awesome, but they are not going to contend that's a lot of the guys in the 5K range. So when you get 50 guys in the 6K range that are all, for the most part, very serviceable professional golfers at whatever tour they are on, you're probably going to get that spread out ownership, which gives you an opportunity to kind of attack this range and be a little bit different.
I totally agree. I mean, there will be a couple of guys that we'll probably see shows like this talk about enough where you'll just love to see maybe a couple of these guys at like 10%. But if that's the case, then, you're probably in pivot mode. And I honestly think there's like one name we didn't bring up that I know Jason Sobel brought up in our quick preview Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning, I should say, was Matt McNeely. I think that's a guy that's probably not going to get a ton of ownership in the top of the 6K range. Go to the bottom of the 6K range. If Gary Woodland can kind of, we know the ball striking is going to be there. If he can have one of those 8 tournaments where he spikes with the putter, he's a flat 6K. Steven Jaeger, honestly, I think he kind of has the complete game. The accuracy off the tee is an issue, but I think at a flat 6K, he is flat 6K, right? Yeah. Yep. I think he's a guy you could play as well that's not going to get much ownership. So there's a lot down here. Eric Van Rooyen, I probably don't like that quite as much, but there's a lot down here.
Okay, let's get freaky in the 5K range. It starts with some familiar names: Chris Kirk, Doug Gim, Nico Echeverria. The middle of the 5K range, okay, a little bit of both. Joe Highsmith, Justin Lauer, Nick Dunlap, okay, but also like Frederick Lacroix at $5,500. And then you go down to the flat $5,000. I don't have headshots for these guys yet. I'm going to have to do a little bit of research. We've got Justin Hicks, Harrison Ott, George Duong Mani, who I admit I have never heard of in my entire life. Mason Howell, I believe, is the 17-year-old who went like 63 in open qualifying to get himself into this field. So, Sia, find me a diamond in the rough, please.
So, a couple of guys that popped to me. One popped to me in particular, and I wasn't expecting it. Viktor Perez at 5,900. When I was looking at stuff like, accuracy, like total driving effectively and like club head speed and putter, Viktor Perez actually showed up across all 3 of those. I mean, obviously very hit or miss, just like anybody in this range, but we see here, like the around the green play is pretty bad, but he can sometimes really pop with the ball striking, can sometimes spike. I mean, we're looking at probably 5 out of the last 8 he's spiked with the putter to a pretty reasonable degree. So yeah, I think Viktor Perez is interesting. Matt McCarty at 5,700. Again, not a super long hitter, so that's not going to serve him well. But we've seen at Oakmont before in 2017, plenty of guys that weren't super long hitters succeed here just by, navigating the course properly. One other guy I wanted to bring up in this 5K range, it was, this is for Japan. If he's in the chat, I'm going to have to go back and look. Emiliano Grillo. He didn't rate out poorly, and he was really good last week from what I recall. I'm just going to throw his name out there.
He's almost back to being the king of Team No Putt, which is exciting. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer for Team No Putt glory, and he lost that. And it's nice to see that he's coming back to his roots. I heard of Viktor Perez. I heard of Matt McCarty. I heard of Emiliano Grillo. Mike, your crack at the 5K range.
Woo. All right. I'll give Grillo for sure. 5,700. You're not going to run into any ownership there. I admittedly don't have any 5K guys in any of these lineups, really. I'm trying to find the very first one. Jackson Koivon.
Okay. Amateur. Actually, might have just turned pro, but out of Auburn or Clemson. I always confuse those two. College kid.
Yep. He is in 1.5% of lineups, 76 of 5,000.
Auburn.
Sam Stevens, 5,900. I'm getting a little Sam Stevens there.
I like that.
Some guy named Phil Mickelson.
Okay.
5,800. Why not? Why not give Phil Lefty a shot here at 5,800? I'm like I said, I'm not getting down to these. Chris Gotterup.
Yes, I was just going to bring him up.
Okay, I had the tab open because I was waiting for somebody
Someone
to
land
get
on it.
there. Misses the cut in Canada, but plays well enough and is having a really good stretch of golf, Sia. And oh, by the way, he's like one of the longest hitters on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with these big greens, like I do worry about a guy who hasn't gained with the putter, like not even close to gained with the putter in the last 4 tournaments. But I mean, listen, like he's 5,400 and he has been playing pretty well. We see the finishing positions have really worked out for him. And you're right, he's can absolutely mash it off the tee. So I don't have a problem with playing Chris Gotterup if you feel the need to go down there.
You know, I want to mention this too, because someone like see me like squinting, reading these names, like doing this. Last week, I did this exact same thing. And I just said, if I like everybody else, I'm going to play the lineup, right? The guy that it gave me was Mateo Montecero. We cashed beautifully at 0% owned, essentially. He was 0.6% owned. I just did that with Chris Gotterup, and I clicked to see what the lineup looks like. It has Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, Joaquin Neiman, Tyrrell Hatton, and Ben Griffin in the lineup.
Yeah.
If he makes the cut, that lineup is definitely cashing.
He would open a lot. And like I said, I mean, it's been a low bar. He hasn't been great in his career, but this is by far the best golf he's ever played. And that includes when he won Myrtle Beach, whatever that was, a year or two ago. So, yeah, I mean, him amongst someone named Cameron Tankersley and Emilio Gonzalez. Yeah, I think Chris Gotterup stands out to me for sure.
I like it.
I had one other thing I was going to say, but I do not remember what it is. Sia, if I give you the opportunity of taking, let's see, how can I do this? You can have Scheffler, Bryson, Rahm, or the field. What side do you want?
You know, the math wouldn't be on my side if it was like an even like split here or minus 110 each way, but I would go with the big 3.
Wow. Mike, Bryson, Scottie, Rombo, or everyone else?
Well, I will take everyone else. I am a slave to the data.
Me too.
And you know, I'm giving you an exact number here real quick.
While you do that, I will tell you that if you find yourself in a situation where you are fading Scottie Scheffler, it is miserable. I think one time in the last 2 years, I had Rory McIlroy in a tournament matchup over Scottie Scheffler, and that guy does not miss a shot. When he does, he breaks your heart by getting up and down from everywhere. He is relentless, and if you are ever finding yourself rooting against him, you are going to have a very miserable time.
Yes. All right. I have 35% is my simulated win equity to those 3 golfers.
Yeah.
That is plus 186 for a price point. So yes, if we're talking an even money wager, for me, unfortunately, it would be a painful existence to watch, but it would be a clear give me the field moment.
It's going to hurt.
What is it when you add Victor Perez?
Oh, that bumps it up. That bumps it up. He's clicking the button and nothing's changing.
I think I lost. I don't know if I lost internet or something. Something is broken.
Yeah, it's broken. We are not even close to done this week, as you can possibly imagine. There's a lot of content coming. Don't forget that tomorrow, Best Bets, that's 7 p.m. Eastern time, Tuesday, if you are not watching this live, and we're going to continue to rock on as much as possible. But for now, I'm going to say thank you to producer Josh, who does all the hard work behind the scenes. See you, Nejad, Mike McClure. I'm Rick Gehman. This has been the Early Wedge. We'll catch you next time.